I stood frozen in my own kitchen, the one I helped pay for, watching my son Michael's mouth move. The words came out slowly, like he was reading from a script someone else wrote. Mum, Alyssa and I think it's best if you move out. This isn't your home anymore. My hand gripped the back of the wooden chair, knuckles white against the grain. I bought that chair. I assembled it myself while they were on vacation. Alyssa leaned against the granite counter I'd helped choose, arms folded, a faint smirk playing at the corner of her mouth. She wasn't even trying to hide it. I searched Michael's face for something, anything, that looked like my son. The boy who cried when I left for work. The teenager who called me when his girlfriend broke his heart. But his eyes wouldn't meet mine. They darted to the floor, to Alyssa, to the window, anywhere but at me. My name is Francis Tate, I whispered, more to myself than to them. And I just got kicked out of the home I helped buy. The room felt smaller suddenly, the air thicker. 22 months I'd lived here. 22 months of believing this was what family meant. 2 years earlier, everything felt different. Gerald, my husband of 31 years, had passed away that spring. The house we'd built together felt too big, too quiet, too full of his absence. Every room echoed with memories I couldn't bear to keep walking through. When Michael called saying they'd found a house but couldn't afford the down payment, something inside me shifted. This was purpose. This was how I could still matter. I sold Gerald's house within 6 weeks and wrote Michael a check for $80,000, the exact amount they needed. Mum, are you sure? Michael had asked, his voice tight with hope. I'm sure, I told him, meaning it. Family takes care of family. Alyssa hugged me that day, her perfume sweet and overwhelming. You're amazing, Francis. We'll never forget this. Her words felt warm then. I didn't know yet how quickly warmth could turn cold. I moved in 3 weeks later, 1 suitcase and 4 boxes. My bedroom was the smallest one, next to the baby's nursery. It's perfect, I said, and I meant it. I was helping. I was needed. I was home. The first few months passed like a gentle dream. I woke early with baby Tyler, changing diapers and warming bottles while Alyssa slept. Michael would stumble downstairs, bleary-eyed, and I'd hand him coffee already brewed exactly how he liked it. 2 sugars, no cream. You're a lifesaver, Mum, he'd say, kissing my forehead before heading to work. I cooked dinners, folded laundry, organised the chaos that comes with new parents. Alyssa would smile at me across the table, saying things like, I don't know what we'd do without you. Her words felt genuine then. I believed them. But small things started shifting, like furniture being moved an inch at a time. Alyssa began putting Tyler down for naps at different times than we'd discussed. When I mentioned it gently, she laughed. Oh, Francis, babies don't need strict schedules. I'm his mother. I know what's best. The way she said, I'm his mother, landed differently than it should have, not as fact, but as territory being claimed. I nodded and smiled, because that's what you do when you don't want to cause trouble. I should have recognized it then, that first boundary being drawn. I didn't mean to overhear. I'd come downstairs for water, my throat dry from sleep. The living room lights were still on, and voices drifted from the kitchen. Alyssa's friends were over, their laughter sharp and bright. Living with an old woman must be exhausting, one of them said. You have no idea. Alyssa's voice carried clearly. She's always hovering, always offering opinions. I feel suffocated in my own house. Someone made a sympathetic noise. Michael laughed, awkward and uncomfortable. But he laughed. He didn't defend me. He didn't say a single word in my favor. I stood in the dark hallway, my bare feet cold against the hardwood, feeling something crack inside my chest. The water glass trembled in my hand. I set it down silently on the hall table and climbed back upstairs, each step heavier than the last. That night, I pulled an empty box from the garage and placed it in my closet. Just in case, I told myself. Just in case. I folded 2 sweaters and placed them inside, my hands shaking slightly. The box sat there like a prophecy I wasn't ready to admit I was preparing for. Tyler's first birthday arrived with balloons and streamers. I'd spent 3 days baking his cake, a 2-layer chocolate masterpiece with buttercream frosting shaped like a teddy bear. I'd stayed up until midnight the night before, perfecting every detail. When I carried it into the dining room, guests already filling the house, Alyssa's face tightened. She stood beside the store-bought sheet cake she'd ordered, vanilla with generic blue frosting, and her smile turned sharp. "We didn't need 2 cakes," she announced loudly, making sure everyone heard. But Francis insisted. She laughed, and several guests joined in politely. "You know how grandmothers are." My face burned. I forced a smile, nodding along like it was a joke I was in on. But my eyes stung, and I had to excuse myself to the bathroom. I stood there, staring at my reflection, telling myself it didn't matter. But it did. It mattered so much I could barely breathe. Later, when no one was watching, I saw Alyssa's cake sitting mostly untouched while mine had been devoured, children's sticky fingers reaching for seconds. It was a small victory that felt hollow. After that, things accelerated. Michael started eating dinner in his office, claiming work deadlines. When I asked if something was wrong, he'd say, "Everything's fine, Mum," without looking up from his phone. Conversations became rehearsals of politeness, empty words filling space where real connection used to live. My laundry started coming back ruined. A red sock mixed with my white blouses. Bleach somehow ending up where it shouldn't. "Oops," Alyssa would say, shrugging. "Accidents happen." But her eyes told a different story. They said, "This is my house. You don't belong here." I started doing my own laundry at midnight, creeping downstairs like a stranger in a place I'd helped purchase. The washer's rumble felt louder in the silence, a reminder of how far I'd shrunk. One morning, I found my favorite coffee mug, the one Gerald bought me on our anniversary, shattered in the trash. "It slipped," Alyssa said when I asked. But it hadn't. I knew it hadn't. I carefully picked out the pieces, wrapping them in tissue, keeping them in my nightstand drawer like evidence of something I couldn't yet name. The explosion came on a Tuesday evening. I was folding towels in the living room when Alyssa stormed in, Tyler on her hip, her face twisted with anger. Michael followed close behind, already defensive. "Your mother criticized my parenting," Alyssa spat, her voice shaking with manufactured hurt. "She said I'm doing everything wrong." I looked up, confused. "I never said anything like that." "You implied it," she shot back, always hovering, always judging. "Michael, I didn't—" But he cut me off, his voice rising to a level I'd never heard before. "Mum, you need to stop. This toxic behavior has to end. Alyssa is Tyler's mother. You need to respect that." The word toxic hit me like a slap. I sat there on their couch, the towels forgotten in my lap, speechless. I looked at my son, really looked at him, and saw the truth I'd been avoiding. He'd already chosen his side. Whatever Alyssa said became his reality. I didn't exist as a separate truth anymore. I was just the problem that needed solving. Packing took 3 hours. I moved through the room like a ghost, folding clothes, wrapping picture frames, my hands operating on autopilot while my mind went numb. Alyssa stood in the doorway, watching with barely concealed satisfaction. Michael sat downstairs, too cowardly to witness what he'd helped create. I zipped the last suitcase and carried my boxes down one at a time. No one offered to help. When everything was loaded in my car, I went to find Tyler. He was in his playpen, surrounded by toys I'd bought him. I picked him up, holding him close, breathing in his baby smell one last time. "Grandma loves you," I whispered. He wrapped his small arms around my neck and started crying, clinging tight like he knew, like he understood what was happening even if he couldn't say it. Alyssa pulled him from my arms. "Tyler, say goodbye now." I drove away, watching him in the rear-view mirror, his face pressed against the window, tiny hands slapping the glass. Tears streamed down my face, blurring the road ahead. I gave them everything. I whispered to the empty car. Everything. The Sunset Motel sat off Highway 42, its neon sign flickering weakly against the grey sky. $39 a night, weekly rates available. The room smelled like cigarettes and bleach, the bedspread worn thin, springs creaking when I sat down. I stared at my reflection in the bathroom mirror under fluorescent lights that made my skin look green. 58 years old. Homeless. I'd worked as a nurse for 33 years. I'd raised a son, buried a husband, survived cancer twice. And here I was, eating instant noodles from a styrofoam cup, replaying every moment, trying to find where I went wrong. The TV played quietly, some game show with canned laughter. I wasn't watching. I was just sitting there, feeling invisible, feeling erased. My phone sat silent on the nightstand. No calls, no messages. Michael hadn't even checked if I was safe. But underneath the grief, buried deep beneath the hurt and humiliation, something else stirred. Something small, but stubborn. A tiny ember of anger that whispered, "You deserve better than this." Sorting through boxes 3 days later, I found the envelope. Cream-coloured paper, my sister Victoria's elegant handwriting across the front. I'd never opened it. She'd passed 2 years before Gerald, and I'd been too overwhelmed to handle her estate properly. My hands shook as I tore it open. Inside was a letter and a property deed. "Dear Franny," it began, using the nickname no one else was allowed to call me. "If you're reading this, I'm gone. I left you the cottage in Meadowbrook. It's not much, needs work, but it's yours. No one can take it from you. Build something beautiful there. Love always, Vic." The deed showed a small property, 2 acres, 40 miles outside the city. I'd forgotten it existed. Victoria bought it decades ago, planning to retire there, but cancer came first. Now it was mine. A place that was actually mine. I sat on that motel bed, clutching the paper, and for the first time in weeks, I felt something like hope. This was a direction. This was a chance. This was where I could start again. The cottage looked worse than I'd imagined. Weeds grew waist-high around the sagging porch. Windows were cracked, paint peeling in long strips. The roof had visible holes where birds nested. It was a disaster. But it was mine. My name on the deed. No one could take it. No one could tell me to leave. I stood in the overgrown yard, hands on my hips, and for the first time in months, I exhaled fully. The air smelled like pine and earth and possibility. Birds sang from the trees. The silence wasn't lonely, it was peaceful. I unlocked the door with the key Victoria had left. Inside smelled musty, furniture covered in dusty sheets. But the bones were good. Solid wood floors, stone fireplace, high ceilings. I walked through each room, mentally cataloguing what needed fixing, what could be saved. In the kitchen, I found Victoria's old apron hanging on a hook, faded blue gingham. I put it on, tied it around my waist, and started cleaning. This is where I rebuild, I thought. This is where I become someone new. I met Hank 2 days later. I was struggling with a broken porch railing, hammer in hand, sweat dripping down my face, when his voice startled me. "You're holding that wrong." He stood at the property line, weathered hands, kind eyes, wearing overalls and a smile. "Hank Sullivan. I own the farm next door." "Francis Tate," I replied, wiping my forehead. He came over, showed me the proper grip, helped me secure the railing properly. We worked in comfortable silence, the kind that feels like friendship before you even know someone's story. When we finished, he offered me lemonade from his thermos. "Thank you," I said, meaning it for more than just the drink. "Neighbors help neighbors," he said simply. "That's how it works out here." Hank became a steady presence after that. He'd bring tools I needed, teach me basic repairs, sit on the porch at sunset sharing stories about his late wife, asking nothing in return. He was just there, solid and kind, reminding me that not everyone disappears when you're broken. Some people show up, some people stay. Rebuilding happened slowly. I painted walls, replaced broken windows, pulled weeds until my back ached. My hands developed calluses. My arms grew stronger. Each repair felt like proof I could fix more than just a house. I planted flowers, Victoria's favourites, purple irises and white daisies. I sanded the floors until they gleamed. I fixed the roof, one shingle at a time, Hank steadying the ladder below. The cottage transformed around me, and I transformed with it. Some days I cried, sitting on the floor surrounded by paint cans, missing Tyler so badly my chest hurt. But then I'd stand up, wipe my face, and keep working. The work saved me. The work reminded me I still had hands that could create, a mind that could plan, a heart that could heal. By autumn, the cottage looked almost beautiful. Curtains in the windows, a garden blooming, smoke curling from the chimney on cold nights. I'd done this. Me. 58 years old, starting over, and I'd done this by myself. I was at the grocery store when I saw her fall. An elderly woman, maybe 75, stumbled near the produce section, her cane clattering across the floor. People walked past, busy, distracted. But I stopped. I helped her up, retrieved her cane, made sure she wasn't hurt. "Thank you, dear," she said, gripping my arm. "Everyone's always in such a hurry these days." We talked while she shopped. Her name was Dorothy. She lived alone, children scattered across the country. "I'm not lonely," she insisted, but her eyes said different. "Just sometimes I forget what it's like to be seen." That night, sitting in my cottage, I couldn't stop thinking about Dorothy, about being invisible, about having no place to belong. An idea started forming, small at first, then growing brighter. This cottage, this property, this space I'd reclaimed. Maybe it could be more than just mine. Maybe it could be a home for others who'd been forgotten too. Starting the retreat wasn't easy. I spent weeks researching permits, regulations, zoning laws. People at City Hall looked at me skeptically. "At your age, starting a business?" one clerk said, eyebrows raised. "That's ambitious." "It's necessary," I replied, filling out another form. I maxed out credit cards. I used the remainder of my savings. I filed paperwork until my eyes blurred. Every signature felt like a bet I was making on myself. Proof I still believed I could matter, could contribute, could build something meaningful. Hank helped me convert the extra bedrooms, install safety rails, create wheelchair-accessible spaces. "You're doing something good here, Francis," he'd say, measuring wood for another ramp. Something important. I wasn't sure I believed him yet, but I kept working. What else was there to do? Give up? Go back? No. The only direction left was forward, even if I couldn't see where forward led. Even if my hands shook signing each document, terrified I was making a terrible mistake. The opening happened on a cold November morning. 3 residents moved in that first week. Dorothy from the grocery store, a veteran named Wallace who'd been living in his car, and a woman named Pearl, whose family had stopped calling years ago. I cooked breakfast every morning, sat with them in the evening, learned their stories. Wallace cried the first night, saying he hadn't slept in a real bed in 8 months. Pearl kept thanking me, over and over, like she couldn't believe someone actually wanted her there. "This is home," I told them, "for as long as you need it." The local newspaper ran a small feature. "Former nurse creates sanctuary for the lonely." The article was modest, just 4 paragraphs and a photo of me standing in front of the cottage. But it spread online, shared across social media, people commenting about the importance of community, of caring, of remembering those the world forgets. My phone started ringing. Volunteers offered help. Donations trickled in. The retreat that started as a desperate idea was becoming something real, something bigger than just my own need to matter. 40 miles away, Alyssa scrolled through her phone, coffee growing cold beside her. She saw the article shared in a local community group, Francis Tate's name right there in bold letters. Her expression tightened. "She's probably just begging for donations," Alyssa muttered to Michael, who barely looked up from his laptop. But she kept reading, kept scrolling, seeing comment after comment praising Francis, calling her inspiring, calling her a hero. Something bitter twisted in Alyssa's stomach. Francis was supposed to disappear. She was supposed to fade into nothing, proof that Alyssa had won. But here she was, thriving, getting attention, being celebrated. It wasn't supposed to happen this way. She closed the app, but the unease stayed. Michael's old co-workers were sharing the article. His college friends, people who knew them, knew what happened. "Did you see this about Michael's mom?" They'd post. The questions would start eventually. The judgments, the realization of what they'd done. Alyssa poured her cold coffee down the sink, jaw clenched. Francis was supposed to be nothing. Instead, she was becoming something Alyssa could never be, genuinely loved. The retreat grew through winter. Word spread through churches, hospitals, senior centers. We housed 8 residents by January, 12 by March. Volunteers came weekly, organizing activities, cooking meals, providing companionship. The cottage became a community hub, proof that caring for forgotten people mattered. Local organizations donated furniture, supplies, time. A dentist offered free checkups. A physical therapist provided weekly sessions. The support overwhelmed me sometimes, reminding me that kindness still existed, that people still showed up when someone asked for help. I thought about Michael sometimes, wondered if he heard about the retreat, if it mattered to him. But mostly, I was too busy living to dwell on the past. My days filled with purpose, with laughter from the dining table, with Pearl teaching me to knit, with Wallace's stories from his time in service. I'd been evicted from my son's house, but I'd found something better, a family I chose, built from kindness instead of obligation. People who saw me, valued me, needed me, not for what I could provide, but for who I was. The crisis came in April. A water pipe burst in the east wall, flooding 3 bedrooms and the hallway. The damage was extensive, thousands of dollars I didn't have. The insurance deductible alone would empty what little remained in the retreat's account. I sat in Hank's kitchen, head in my hands, crying harder than I had since the eviction. I can't close this place, I said through tears. These people have nowhere else to go. Then we won't let you close, Hank said firmly. He made calls. By evening, the town had mobilized. A benefit dinner was organized. A GoFundMe went live. The hardware store donated materials. Contractors volunteered labor. Within 72 hours, we'd raised enough to cover repairs and 3 months of operating costs. I stood in the middle of the construction chaos, surrounded by strangers working together to save something I'd built, and sobbed. Not from loss, but from gratitude. These people cared. They showed up. They proved that community still existed, that people still fought for what mattered. The repairs took 2 weeks. We reopened stronger, with better systems, more support, more proof that this work mattered to people beyond just me. My phone rang on a Tuesday evening. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me press accept. Hello? Mom? Michael's voice cracked through the speaker. It's me. Silence. My heart pounded. I said nothing, waiting. Alyssa left. His words came out rushed, desperate. She filed for divorce, took the house. I'm living in a studio apartment near campus. Everything's gone. Mum, I don't know what to do. I walked to the window, watching the sun set behind the trees. Part of me wanted to scream, to remind him how he'd thrown me out, how he'd chosen her over me. But mostly I just felt tired and sad for both of us. I'm sorry, Michael, I said quietly, truly. Can we talk? Can I see you? I hesitated, the silence stretching between us. I need to think about it. I hung up before he could respond. Hank found me sitting on the porch steps, staring at nothing. He didn't ask questions. He just sat beside me until the stars came out, his presence saying everything words couldn't. You're not alone. You don't have to rush. You're allowed to protect yourself. Michael arrived 3 weeks later. I watched his car pull up, newer than the one I remembered, but already showing signs of neglect. He stepped out slowly, taking in the cottage, the gardens, the ramp, the sign reading Francis's Haven above the door. I stood on the porch, arms crossed, watching him approach. He looked thinner, older, shadows under his eyes. Mum, he said, voice small. You built all this? Yes. He walked around the property, speechless, while I gave him the tour. 8 residents now, daily activities, a volunteer coordinator, partnerships with local healthcare providers. He watched me interact with Dorothy, saw Wallace shake my hand with genuine respect, heard Pearl call me her guardian angel. I didn't know, he whispered, standing in the middle of the living room. I had no idea you were doing something like this. You never asked. That landed hard. His face crumpled. We sat on the porch at sunset, the same place I'd cried so many times. But now it felt different. This was my space, my peace. He was the visitor now. The truth came out slowly over the next hour. Alyssa had been secretly taking out loans against the house, draining accounts, maxing credit cards. She'd blamed Michael for financial stress while she spent on clothes, trips, things he never saw. When he finally checked the accounts, everything was gone. She left 3 months ago, he said, voice hollow. Took Tyler. I get supervised visits twice a month. She's telling him I'm the reason we lost the house. She's rewriting everything. I listened without interrupting. Part of me felt vindicated, seeing her cruelty finally turned on him. But mostly, I just felt sad. Tyler was suffering. Michael was suffering. Everyone was suffering because of choices made in anger and pride. She isolated me, he continued. From you? From friends. She'd get angry if I talked to anyone she didn't approve. I thought I was keeping peace. I didn't realize she was building a prison. I understood that. I'd felt that prison too. The slow shrinking of yourself until you couldn't remember who you used to be. We sat in silence, watching the sky turn purple, both of us victims of the same person's manipulation. I found Michael the next morning sitting in his car, hands gripping the steering wheel, sobbing. I'd been awake since 5, watching him through the kitchen window, unsure if I should go out or give him privacy. Finally, I couldn't stand it. I opened the passenger door and slid in beside him. He looked at me, face wet with tears, completely broken. I lost everything, Mum. Everything. The house, my son, my dignity, and I deserve it, after what I did to you. You made mistakes. I chose her over you. I threw you out of your own home. Yes, I said simply. You did. He cried harder. I sat beside him, not comforting, not condemning, just present. Sometimes the truth needs space to breathe before healing can start. Sometimes forgiveness isn't about erasing what happened. It's about choosing what comes next. I don't expect you to forgive me, he whispered. I know. But I'm asking anyway. Please, Mom. I'm so sorry. His voice broke completely. I'm so sorry. I looked at him, my only child, broken and humbled and finally seeing what he'd done. I thought about rage, about justice, about revenge. But mostly, I thought about Tyler and about myself, about the woman I wanted to be. We sat on the porch as the sun set, painting the sky orange and pink. I made tea, Earl Grey with honey, the way Michael loved it as a child. He wrapped his hands around the warm cup, not drinking, just holding it. I believed everything she said, he admitted. Every complaint, every criticism. I thought you were the problem. I thought I was protecting my family. You were protecting the wrong thing. He nodded, staring at his tea. I know that now. Too late, but I know. I set my own cup down, choosing words carefully. You hurt me deeply, Michael. You threw me away like I was nothing. I'm not pretending that didn't happen. I know, Mom. But, I continued, my voice steady and firm, if you're truly sorry, if you're willing to do the work, to really change and understand what you did wrong, then maybe we can start again. Slowly. The right way this time. His eyes filled with tears again, hope and pain mixing together. You mean it? I mean it, but I'm not who I was before. I won't shrink myself to fit your life again. I've built something here. This matters to me. I can see that, he said quietly. It's amazing, Mum. You're amazing. I forgot that. I'm sorry I forgot. We sat in silence as stars appeared, sipping tea, beginning the slow, careful work of rebuilding what had been destroyed. 6 months passed. Michael volunteered at the retreat every Saturday, helping with repairs, cooking meals, learning from the residents. He was quiet, humble, doing the work without seeking praise. Tyler came sometimes now, running through the gardens, calling me Grandma again, his laughter filling the spaces that grief once occupied. One evening, a young woman visiting her grandmother asked me a question. We were sitting in the common room, firelight dancing on the walls, residents playing cards nearby. How did you find the strength to forgive him? She asked softly. After everything he did? I thought about it, watching Michael help Wallace with a crossword puzzle, seeing the genuine care in my son's actions now. Because life has a way of proving a mother's worth, I said finally, even when the world forgets it, and because forgiveness isn't about them. It's about choosing who you want to be. She nodded, not entirely understanding yet, but filing it away for later. Michael caught my eye across the room and smiled, tentative but real. I smiled back. We weren't perfect, we weren't fixed, but we were here, together, doing the work of becoming better. And that was enough. The fire crackled softly. Outside, wind moved through the trees Victoria had planted decades ago. This cottage, this sanctuary, this life I'd built from the ashes of my eviction, it wasn't just mine anymore. It was ours, all of us, broken people, learning to heal together, proving that even in the darkest moments, even when everything's stripped away, you can rebuild. You can start again. You can choose grace. You can reclaim your worth. And sometimes, if you're patient enough, if you're brave enough, the people who hurt you most can learn to see what they destroyed. And maybe, just maybe, they'll spend the rest of their lives trying to honor it.